And now empty rhetoric from, get this, another liberal lame duck. It's outgoing Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, who's making light of Trump's 51st state comment, calling the president-elect's jab and trolling a smokescreen that's distracting from potential U.S. tariffs that Justin claims would hit Americans' wallets.
As a successful negotiator, he likes to keep people a little off balance. The 51st state, that's not going to happen. It's just a non-starter. Canadians are incredibly proud of being Canadian. But people are now talking about that as opposed to talking about, for example, what the impact of 25% tariffs on steel and aluminum coming into the United States, on energy, whether it's oil and gas or electricity. I mean, no American wants to pay 25% more for electricity or oil and gas coming in from Canada. And that's something that I think people need to pay a little more attention to.
What a shame Trudeau didn't pay more attention to the threat of tariffs in the first place. It might have saved his job. Here to react, Strategas Securities Chairman and CEO Jason Tennert. That's what I call gasping for relevancy, because he is G-O-N-E out of there, and he's just trying to talk a big game. What in the heck is he even talking about?
I don't know. His approval rating, as you know, was, I think, 22. So it's less than half of that of Donald Trump. He's been there for 9 years and is yet another global elite that's more focused on global elite issues than the issues that affect his own constituents and his own citizens. And so it's not, he and people like Gavin Newsom seem to be more worried about their hair than the people that they govern. Right. And I think that's one of the problems. And that's why we're seeing, I think, a very significant shift towards right-of-center populism, not just in the United States, but elsewhere outside the United States as well.
Canadians have been putting up with this. Almost 50% is gone before it gets home in their tax policies, regulatory costs. Do you think Trudeau even understands it? I don't know if it even matters anymore. To Dagan's point, he's semi-resigned and he'll be out in March. Is he just trying to burnish, I don't know, some kind of legacy?
It just seems like misdirection for his own failed policies. They're 9 years, right? So it's not exactly new, this act. And his, as I said, his approval ratings suggest that the Canadians are very upset with his leadership of a very important ally for the United States and a country that's replete with natural resources that shouldn't have any problems, that has all of the natural advantages that should allow it to succeed, and yet it's not. And again, I think that has a lot to do with the fact that a lot of these people like meeting each other in places like Villa d'Est and Davos and all the rest of it, like giving each other awards, and don't really focus on the day-to-day needs of everyday Canadians or everyday Americans.
And the Liberals here especially, but they never talk about, like, if you say raise a tariff on imports, and imports are only, what, 14% of our GDP, but simultaneously lower corporate taxes, there is that benefit on the American consumer and American worker by you lower cost here in the United States while simultaneously helping our competition here by levying tariffs.
Well, listen, President Trump understands that the biggest prize in the global economy is the U.S. consumer, by far. And as a businessman, he's saying, why would I give that away for free? Why on earth would I give something that everyone wants access to away without any sort of price to be paid for it? And I think many Americans agree with him on that. And that could be economic and non-economic issues. It could be help with immigration. It could be less fentanyl shipments. It could be greater sales of our arms. All of those things would be good for Americans. And I think it's appropriate for President Trump to drive a hard bargain on something that's so valuable.
All right, let's talk bargains. In this case, what's not a bargain, red state, blue state, the SALT tax, the state and local tax deduction. And then you also have this congestion pricing issue. President Trump's spoken out about that. Congressman Mike Lawler had something to say about this.
States like New York are donor states. We send more tax revenue to the federal government than we receive back. So SALT is a function of avoiding double taxation. Yes, I agree. The leadership in New York is terrible. Governor Hochul is an absolute failure and needs to be replaced in 2026.
Right.
But New York taxpayers should not be penalized with double taxation by the federal government.
Well, Jason?
Well, listen, the original idea of
I'm making a face.
Well,
Sorry.
the original idea of getting rid of SALT, I understand very well, was the idea that you don't want to essentially reward states that have terrible governance, right? The problem is, I've lived here in New York City for 34 years. I'm one of the 15% of the people in my congressional district that voted for Donald Trump. It's essentially a one-party state. And so I have to say my attitude on this, perhaps selfishly, has changed a bit, which is to say I wouldn't mind them increasing the $10,000 deduction a bit instead of getting rid of it completely. By the same token, though, the issue is this is just one in a series, whether it's congestion pricing, establishing no cash bail, another just bad policy that is hurting everyday Americans, everyday New Yorkers, and there have to be some changes here. I hope Donald Trump can come to the rescue of this once great city.
It is not the nation's job to bail out New Yorkers and the jackasses that they vote for to run this state and Jersey and Connecticut. Mike Lawler thinks he's drawn a line in the sand. I live here, and it does not resonate with me because it allows these liberal leaders to keep taxes high and keep raising them. He introduced a $100,000 SALT cap for individuals. You better get on out of here. And everybody who doesn't like it, move. President Trump, you better not give in to this. You better not give in. $10,000, you can keep it right there. And if Mike Lawler doesn't like it, stick it where the sun doesn't shine. Sorry,
okay.
Jason.
No problem.
You know what? I was wrong. This is the greatest thing that the Republicans did in the 2017 tax bill. You capped it, and that is it. You're done. No help for blue states.
The change has to be local, and this is about the country. It's bigger than a few states or several.
Now I'll shut up. Jason Tennert, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
You get nothing and like it.
That's fine.
Sorry.
That's fine. I'm used to it.